The Green Sheet is a financial publication of the MWRA Advisory Board. This installment is a review of actual expenditures through the third quarter of fiscal year 14, actual Q3 revenues, and how this data impacts future years. The Q3 variances discussed shortly are a combination of expenditures and revenues being different than originally budgeted. The Advisory Board's priority is always to ensure that these variances, when positive, be used in a way that guarantees future rate assessment increases are sustainable and predictable. In this context, we move to a bird's-eye view of the fiscal year 14 CEB, which is broken into three categories of direct costs, indirect costs, and capital financing, which add up to the total operating costs, the amount that must be raised in revenue. Over 95% of this total is rate revenue coming from the ratepayers. 3/4 of the way through fiscal year 14 is an ideal time to review progress for the current fiscal year and revisit assumptions for the fiscal year 15 budget. Direct and indirect costs will be looked at in a moment, but for more information on how the capital financing budget works, please see the February 2014 Green Sheet. Moving first to direct costs, this stacked bar graph compares Q3 expenses in blue to the remaining fiscal year 14 budget in red. Personnel, chemicals, utilities, ongoing maintenance, and other services are all shown here at under 75% expended through Q3. Personnel costs are the largest portion of the direct costs and have come under budget due to the time it takes for the authority to replace a large number of retiring staff members. Here is an alternative view of the other direct costs, which are simply direct costs not related to personnel. The smaller categories such as other materials, professional services, and trainings and meetings all have been well maintained through Q3. Ongoing maintenance at over $20 million expended through Q3 is the largest other direct cost and is a spending category that is watched closely because proper maintenance can extend the useful life of expensive equipment and facilities. Utility expenditures rise and fall with the market for big ticket items like electricity, natural gas, and diesel fuel. Similarly, chemical costs are based almost entirely on market conditions. Finally, other services is a catch-all type category but is driven mainly by sludge pelletization, the cost of operating the pellet plant in Quincy. All of these costs are under 75% expended. Moving to indirect expenses, the amount expended through Q3 is again in blue with remaining budget in red. Insurance, reimbursements, mitigation, and other direct expenses are all at or below 75% expended, while the pension contribution is funded in a lump sum in the middle of the fiscal year. The highest indirect cost is reimbursements, which includes payments in lieu of taxes paid to cities and towns for the use of land, but this category is driven mainly by watershed reimbursements paid to the state's Department of Conservation and Recreation. The Advisory Board maintains the position that the MWRA should only reimburse DCR for work that directly impacts the water supply. Moving finally to revenue, the authority has raised slightly more than 75% of projected fiscal year 14 revenues through Q3. Rate revenue is the category which affects the ratepayers and makes up over 95% of total revenue. All other revenue is known as non-rate revenue and is broken into four categories. First, other user charges currently includes entrance fees from the last two communities to join the system. Next, other revenue is driven mainly by permit fees and the energy being produced at the Deer Island treatment plant, but fiscal year 14 also includes emergency connection fees that were not budgeted, which is why the other revenue category has raised more than the total year budget through Q3. Rate stabilization monies were applied to fiscal year 14 to lower the amount needed to be raised through rate assessments. Through Q3, non-rate revenue totals 4.9% of all revenue raised, including the final category, interest income, which is a significant portion of non-rate revenue, but has seen a drastic reduction since fiscal year 07 due to a depressed interest rate market and the inability to invest funds long term as reserves are planned to be released in the next few fiscal years. To recap, through the third quarter of fiscal year 14 CEB, direct and indirect expenditures have a positive outlook, meaning that actual spending is currently projected to be $4.2 million lower than budget, potentially defeasing debt impacting the next few fiscal years. Capital financing also has a positive outlook through Q3, and for more information, please visit our website and view the February 2014 Green Sheet. Finally, the revenues raised through Q3 show a moderate outlook. On the one hand, unexpected revenue from emergency connection fees increased the amount of non-rate revenue that will be collected in fiscal year 14. However, the trend of decreasing interest income has continued, non-rate revenue that will be difficult to replace through other non-rate sources. Overall, fiscal year 14's revenue is projected to have a positive variance of $1 million, which when combined with the direct and indirect variances could potentially pay down debt more quickly, alleviating future fiscal impacts and improving the outlook for fiscal years 15, 16, and 17. helping to ensure that the Advisory Board's long-term goal of keeping all future rate assessment increases under 4% comes to fruition. For any questions, please visit our website or feel free to email the Advisory Board directly